Good evening. You're on Ottawa Designers. We're here with an amazing Ottawa photographer, Della Thomson Vaslet, who actually did a photo shoot with me last night for the first time, and I loved it. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
It was so fun. It's such a difference doing it between women, men, and how you come with a whole bunch of ideas and then you can piece together the outfits. I was watching your mind work and how you had everything organized. This outfit goes with this accessory, that goes with that. This is there. And I just loved the experience. So I wanted to ask you, how did you get into photography? Give us a little history on you.
Uh, I used to be in event management, and I ran a few companies in the wedding industry way like back when. And I at that time, what we noticed was sometimes it was really hard to get the photography from the photographers of the brides and the decor and stuff like that. And so because that was so challenging, we decided to like invest in a camera and some courses, so that we could also take some photos at the same time, and before the wedding, so that we had stuff for our portfolio and we could guarantee some photos to show that like we had the decor
Yeah.
planners. But yeah, it got challenging sometimes to get the photos. So that's kind of how it started. And then fast forward, I was in public relations and I realized that I really liked the photography side of it, not the public relations side of it. So then I just kind of dabbled for a while, and then I actually got heavier into it right before the pandemic. But the pandemic basically forced no person to person. So I had no interest in doing photography over a computer. It didn't make sense to me.
No.
So instead I switched gears to product photography. And
Ah.
that actually ended up like working out really well because the clients could drop off the products in boxes on our step, no contact, and then we could talk about the shoots over virtual, get it done, and then it ships back out to them. So that's kind of where it started, and then it kind of grew from there.
So smart. And you also modeled quite a bit. Like I was talking to your mom and I found it so fascinating how you can have the idea of a shoot, set it all up and do it. So how did modeling intertwine with photography for you?
My mom put me in modeling when I was just a little girl. And like back when I had to do modeling classes, we had to wear like books on our heads and like walk up and down stairs. Like it was a whole different world than it is now.
Yeah.
And back then I did like just some basic stuff, like some Sears, some um, mannequin modeling. So we would be in windows and then very still and then move just to like, because people would be watching and they're waiting for you to
Yeah,
move.
I remember freeze modeling and stuff
Yes.
like that, where you'd have to stay and get your pose, and then people would walk around and you'd have little kids going,
Yeah, and they're waiting for you to move or blink or wink.
trying to laugh. You makes you think of the soldiers in England where they have to stand there and
And you're
not
like,
move and
come on,
not
do something.
exactly. You just want them to sneeze or something. So, what are your favorite things to shoot?
I love anything that kind of represents um fashion, anything. I've always loved fashion. I'm a big Chanel fan. I used to design as well. I always have loved fashion. And so one of the things with photography, it allows me the ability to like create something beautiful. And so I get really inspired by anything from like Elle magazine and Vogue magazine. And I follow like a lot of other like groups and photographers that have that kind of genre.
Yeah.
And I just find it exciting when you can like just capture something like very fashion forward and unique. And it's so funny because I know a lot of people are like, they'll see that that model that's kind of hunched over and
Yeah,
I'm like, I love that. I'm like,
me
it's
too.
so like, I just love that.
I do
So,
too.
so
I think those are so cool, like the Vogue photo shoots and the really artistic ones where you're doing, a different pose and all that. I love that. I
they're
think
dramatic.
so. Is that your favorite thing to capture? Like exotic, like what's your favorite thing to capture? And can you tell us about an interesting shoot you had?
I might sound biased, but I love shooting gingers.
Ah,
There
very
is something
cool.
about red hair.
Yeah.
You could wear all black, but there's just something about red hair and freckles. I love shooting freckles.
Yeah.
red hair and freckles is probably my favorite like model, I guess, to have
Very cool.
in the studio. And I just find like there's so many different obviously degrees of gingers, and like I said, maybe it's biased because that's my background, but I just find them so beautiful. And
It's true. Unique features are what are so special. You know, when you have a freckle or a beauty mark or even a scar or something that
yeah,
makes
things that
somebody
are,
unique, I find that gorgeous, you know,
yeah,
or an oddity of a person,
so
not
there's
your standard beauty.
exactly. So there's this there was this brand I used to follow a lot. They were the first brand I felt that came out with showing what society calls flaws. I call beautiful, and like it was Benetton. Benetton.
Yes, I remember. I love that.
Their models were so they were just so unique, and they had the society, you know, deemed flaws, but I was attracted to it. I always thought it was so beautiful capturing that, whether it was faces full of freckles or spaces between the teeth. I love that.
And it was very cool because it was one of the first brands where you couldn't identify what race a person was.
Oh, you
So
couldn't.
they specifically chose people that could be Black, Asian, Indian, like any race, white, whatever. And you wouldn't know Mexican, Spanish, you know, Moroccan,
Yeah.
whatever. And you had no idea where they came from, which was super cool because they made it kind of this even playing field where you could guess
Yeah.
what that nationality or race was, which is cool. Why is it so important to book a professional photographer versus somebody who just wants to use a camera to photograph people?
I think, well, first of all, when we're gonna have our picture taken, we want to show our best side.
Yeah.
And yes, everybody has a phone and a camera, but that doesn't mean they know how to show your best side. You want a photographer that can kind of pull your personality out so that it's like really you shining through. Otherwise, like a lot of photos can look kind of flat. You know, they can look like any Joe anywhere. I think yeah, it's really interesting. I think one thing you had learned last night is that we're so used to doing selfies, right? So we're always like this and we're showing like our neck. But when you're in a camera in a studio,
Yeah.
we need the opposite, right?
Yeah.
We're not to see like this, you know, your neck face.
Because you're holding your selfie and you're doing this versus in a studio, you want to do that.
Yeah, and it's a completely different dynamic. And you know, I have seen a lot of great photography with phones. I'm not now one who uses a phone for photography. I just think that it's also part of the experience. And I think that's one thing that we really kind of pride ourselves on is that when you come into the studio, we want to know about you. We take some time to get to know you, and we want to pull your personality out during the shoot, and we don't have like a time limit. Like we do put a time on it to like give an idea, but at the end of the day, we want to get the shot. So we're going to go until we get the shot.
Yeah.
You know,
and there is a sweet spot, you know, where, you know, the model's still interested, the photographer is still interested, and there is a sweet amount of hours. And like you mentioned, 2.5 hours is a great amount of time where you get out of that nervous beginning, but then you're not tired holding, because some of those poses, they're a huge workout, you know, if you're doing a yoga pose or a
and we had to build trust, right? Like you exactly my arms, we had to build some trust there, you know.
That was a good one. And honestly, that's hard for me to do, so I built the trust and I appreciate it. It was fabulous. How can you decipher from a pro and not a pro?
I mean, nowadays it's tricky because like there are so many presets out there. There are so many different alternative styles of shooting. So I might look at something and say, well, that's definitely not pro, but it could be a pro in just their style, right? So we all have kind of our own style and our own way of doing things. I will say that lighting, and I'm not a big tech person. Okay, so I can't tell you all the specs about lighting, but I will say that since I started using in-studio lighting and I can control where the shadows fall, sometimes that can be an identifier. And it might just be an identifier that you or I feel that they're not using the light correctly, but does that mean we're right or wrong? I mean, it's art, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I guess kind of tough. Now, I will say, as much as grainy photos are coming back in style, when I look at a photo and it's blurred or it's grainy, unless I see it as very artistic,
Yeah.
to me, that's, a shot that maybe wasn't well done or wasn't professionally done.
Absolutely. You mentioned lighting as well. So, how does lighting play an effect in photography?
Well, lighting controls all your shadows and your highlights. And so for women, for example, like it's really nice when our lighting can kind of if our lighting was shooting up, you'd see like our double chin, we would have bags under our eyes. If our lighting's shooting on an angle or down, that causes the shadow to come under here, and that takes away, those under eyes, and it
Okay.
puts a little darker under the chin so our little gobble gobble isn't showing.
Amazing. Amazing. So now, how do you discover your angles as a woman, as a photographer? How can you figure those angles out?
Yeah, that's tricky. It took me a little while because my body is not the same as everyone else's. And I think I started with just myself in the mirror and practicing poses myself that I could do on my models or that I could replicate and show them and they can copy me.
Okay.
But not like I'm 5'2", right? And like a size 10, I'm not every model or at all like the small models. With small models, it's what's nice is that I can actually do some research and find like the perfect poses for those long legs or for a long torso. It really just takes practice, and I think just constantly researching and constantly being inspired. I have like stacks of like poses that I've saved for just whenever the time comes for that particular thing, and I just pull those files up when it's time and just
So
go,
cool.
but every person's shape's so different, and so you
Yeah.
just really just have to learn as you go.
I love that last night, how you had, 100 photos in your mind of what we made you, what we're going to do. You had ideas. Okay, we're trying this. Then Roxy's like, we're going to try that, this, boom, on to the next. I loved it. I loved the direction and the vision that you guys had. It was like watching art come to life through someone's brain, which is so cool as a designer to watch. I love seeing the mind work and formulate these ideas. How do you assist women in getting the perfect shot? And what is the perfect shot?
Okay, so perfect shot to me isn't necessarily going to be my client's perfect shot.
Okay.
Perfect shot to me is like right in the middle of conversation, they give me this belly laugh, and it's like bang, oh, I just caught
Yeah.
that, and it wasn't a post, moment.
Yeah.
Just like they were just being their true authentic self. Now, that's not always the photo that my clients want, and that's okay. I mean, that's for me, and that's for me to share so that people understand that when they come, they're having an experience, and it's like a girls' night out. They're enjoying themselves, or a guy's night out. We're
Absolutely.
either one. But I think I think the perfect shot is how we see ourselves, and we're very self-critical. So when we look at something, I always say, okay, so when I tell somebody, okay, you're going to get your catalog, but what I want you to do is, I don't want you to like try and look at the flaws of every photo. I want you to actually go back, squint your eyes, and then go through them and see what jumps out at you. Because it's the facial expression, the pose, little things can be adjusted. That's not a problem. It's more like I just kind of like give yourself a silhouette and see if like that's what
Yeah.
you want, because otherwise we'll sit there and we'll pick at everything and we'll
Absolutely.
never be happy with the picture.
I highly recommend to every woman, man, to take photos and see what you're not seeing in yourself, because it's so amazing. I mean, I've done photos since I was a teenager to now. And I remember being hypercritical at, 19, 20, 21 and thinking, oh my God, my this or my that and whatever. And I look back at those photos now and I go, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I had a problem with this. Like, so now I've realized it's so important, once a year, once every few years, take those photos. They're memories. You can stick them in a drawer. You don't have to show them to people. I have tons of photos that I never share and whatnot, but it's so nice to have them of your children, of your, multi-generations, your sisters, your besties, whatever. And you can look back and remember, at 80 years old, when you're, in your rocker and you're walking around all crunched, you can pull it out and say, look, this was my bestie and I on vacation here, or, experiencing this. I think it's such a gift of what you're doing to capture these moments for people. And even, when people pass away or something happens to someone, these memories become invaluable, more than any, amount of money or whatever, to have these moments that you can remember the experience, which you make it an experience, and the time. It's just invaluable. It's so valuable. It's so precious. It's just incredible. So now, how fast from the time someone contacts you, you take a photo, and they get the shots, how fast are you?
Probably like that's probably our unique selling proposition. So, I'm retired, and so I can be very, very flexible with times, like the time of day. From like I'm up until 4 in the morning. You want to shoot at 2 in the morning? Let's do it. But we can be very flexible. I think that it all depends. So our weekends book fast, and so if people are flexible to do evenings, then I can get them in like sometimes within like a couple days. Um, Day of, if someone contacts me day of, it's not just not possible. In terms of turnaround time, I get really excited. As soon as I finish the shoot, I want to start editing right away. So when it comes to the shoots, we normally send the catalog for them to pick. We color correct and send the catalog. They're not edited, and they'll have that within 24 hours.
Wow.
And then after that, once they choose their photos, depending on how many need to be edited, we do try and do like anywhere from 3 days to 14 days, depending on how many we're doing.
That's amazing. So can you walk us through the process of phone call until receiving the photos?
So I'll be honest, I never answered the phone. So I always
Okay, so contact, let's say contact.
email, text, message. I would say we try to respond to messages the same day they come in. If you contact me personally, you'll probably get a response within an hour. And then from there, then we just if they're sure, like they know what package they want, they're happy with the pricing, because sometimes that can fluctuate. Then we just send the agreement model release, deposit gets paid, and their date gets put in, and they're in. And it can happen. Sometimes it's happened within 48 hours, and sometimes it's happened within a week. So it just depends.
That's amazing. And as far as fees, what are people looking at? What's the gamut of range?
It does range. I would say the minimum price of anything we do is $250.
Right.
So that would be like a headshot session. Sometimes we do specials. Like we do have a special that's going to come up for Mother's Day, and
Aw,
be mommy and me sessions that are black and white. So that'll start at 250, and it has a set amount of pictures in it. So we do try and like we start at 250, and that kind of goes up from there. But I would say we're probably on like the lower middle range for
right.
photography in Ottawa. I look like we look at our cost of doing business and measure things out. We don't do anything in print yet. Like we're not working with a print company to supply that. That's when things can get really, really expensive.
Okay.
When you start looking at print, because we're still in digital and that works for us, we are able to keep our costs, I feel, pretty decent. But that doesn't mean like we still get potential clients who are like, oh, you're too expensive. I'm like, okay, I understand. Like
Yeah.
that everyone's budget is completely different, and
Yeah.
that makes sense for them.
Do you do anything for charity or causes and things like that? Have you been involved in doing photography for a cause?
So I have my hands full. I'm the president of the Finley Creek Community Association. That's where I live. And so I do have my hands kind of full with that. And anytime photography is kind of required, I do our headshots and stuff like that. In terms of specific to charity, as things come up, like people will contact us and say like, we're doing a charity event, will you donate to it? So we always do. We'll donate like a certificate for a family session or things like that that they can put in their
Raffle.
yeah, the raffles or silent auctions. But anything specific, like there's nothing, no charity.
That's a lot in
specifically
itself. That's a lot in itself. And they're usually involved in so many. I do the same thing, and giving those are so great because then everyone that comes gets to see it and moves on, and it's fabulous. So now, how can people get a hold of you? What's your Facebook, Instagram, website, phone, all that?
Well, the bonus is there's not a lot of Dellas in Ottawa, so it's really easy to find me on Facebook.
Yeah.
Ginger Della, like not hard to find me. My business partner Roxy, also a unique name, so it really helps with finding us. But In Spades Imagery, Instagram, Facebook. Our website's really simple, www.inspades.com, and it's like in and then spades, like Kate Spade, spades. So yeah, they can, that's the best. I mean, the best way honestly is to just message me directly if you can, because I'm much faster that way. But yeah, and you can go right through the website in terms of requesting a booking and stuff too.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I can't wait to see more of the photos and do it again and see more of the stuff you have coming. I love watching it, and I love when women are doing what they love and really empowering other women to do it. And I cannot recommend enough for people to reach out to Della and do a shoot. Try it out. She will make you feel great. She will have inspiration if you don't have any. And if you do, she's able to capture that. So thank you so much for being on Ottawa Designers. And
thank you for having me
soon.
Bye.
Bye.